I don't have the facts to back up the statement I'm about to make.
That's
So
all right.
I
That's not what we're
will,
here for.
I will, I will qualify this by saying this is my opinion and my opinion only.
That's what we're here for, man. That's what we're here for.
So the whole two-handed thing.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Tour Talks. We've been growing rapidly. I cannot thank all of you guys enough for your support. Today, we have another really unique perspective. Michael Haugen Jr., someone who has got 5 titles, also some PBA 50 Tour titles, and I would say has the greatest comeback ever on television, in my opinion. But I'm really excited to talk to him because the list of people that have national titles is already small. But then, Mike, I think you have almost 10 years between your first PBA Tour title and your last PBA Tour title, not PBA 50. But when I was doing some research, I think they're almost about 10 years apart. So you competed at that level for nearly 10 years, which the list of that people is very small. And then you also went into the PBA 50 Tour, Rookie of the Year, Player of the Year, and so, in my opinion, the amount of people that I can sit down and really talk to right now today that has been able to accomplish that and see that is, I wouldn't even need to get to my toes. I could just count them on my fingers. You know what I mean? And so I really want to dive in and hopefully help our audience find some things that you see, learn from you, and that unique perspective that you have of competing at that level for so long. But first off, how are you doing, man? How are you bowling? I think I will league with you a little bit, and I know you were fighting a little bit of an injury. How's that going, and what else do you got going on?
So the injury was a while back. I had knee surgery, but that was a long time ago. I'm good. I'm 57. I'm old. I fight aches and pains like everybody else, but I'm throwing it good. I was going through a grip change. Still
Okay.
going through a grip change. I'm going back to what I was using earlier in my career, and it's kind of freeing me up again and allowing me to do some of the things that I'm comfortable doing, because I'm not magically going to be able to put 500 reps on a bowling ball. So
Right.
going
Right.
back to strengths and trying to play to my strength more and tackle that while still trying to continue to be versatile and learn the patterns, learn the balls, and really learning how to try to keep up with the kids.
Yeah. So I guess let's dive into that. Tell us a little bit about what you're changing with your fit and what you're seeing or what you're struggling with in the environment that's causing you to consider that.
So we'll talk about the grip. The grip, I went back to using grips. I haven't used grips in years.
Okay.
And I'm using the oval grips from Vice. And I went to an exacticated thumb, which is also a Vice product. And for those who aren't familiar with that, it's basically you find a thumb hole that you really, really like, and you duplicate it, and you can drill a hole into a bowling ball and tap this sleeve in, and it does everything for you. It copies the bevel of your front up top of the hole. It copies what's the shape inside your hole, so that you basically have an exacticated fit, and it goes from ball to ball. It doesn't transfer ball to ball like the it does, but
Right.
exacticated just goes into the ball. It stays permanently in there. But the theory is you get the same exact feel with every ball.
Right.
I've kind of gone back to that for two reasons. One, it's simpler to replicate no matter where you are in the country when you're traveling to bowl. And sometimes we do drill bowling balls on the fly. So the process, trying to keep it simple, because you're in the pro shop business, that I don't care who you train and how many people you train, everybody does it slightly differently.
Yep. Yep.
And to a player who has pretty good touch and feel, a 16th or his 32nd, you'd say might not make a difference, but sometimes we can feel it.
Yeah.
And it's that little bit of difference can be the difference between making a cut, making match play, or winning a title. So it's that important.
Yeah. 100%.
So that's the first part of your question. The second part of your question: lane conditions, rev rates, urethane. That's what I'm battling. That's what I'm dealing with. And as two-handers become more prevalent in the sport, and obviously as the younger generation comes up, just revving it more and more, lanes don't hold up as long as they used to. Obviously, the bowling balls are more dynamic than they've ever been. Basically, in the old days when I was bowling, I could play my game for more than half the block. I could play the lanes the way I wanted to play them and attack them the way I wanted to play them. And now, after a game or two, I'm forced to play them the way the masses play them. And I still have to do a version of that for me, because like I said, I can't put 500 revs on a bowling ball. So I'm learning that. I'm learning which angles I need to play to the front to stay competitive, to still see my ball go through the pins, which bowling balls are the right ones for me. What amount of surface am I using? I used to never really shine a bowling ball. I'd get a ball shiny and just use it and let it just wear itself out.
Right.
Now I find myself shining some bowling balls again.
Okay.
Just because I need the extra length before I see it tip. I'm a little more, forward and over and roll, and my ball reads the fronts anyway. So, and then I've also found that on some heavier patterns, I'm using more surface and trying to trap it a little bit more, and hopefully still find a way to get the 10 out. So it's a never-ending battle.
Yeah.
Luckily,
do you find that those kind of scenarios you're talking about also are in the PBA 50 Tour? Because I think people would assume, okay, rev rates are high on the national tour, but they may not know really what the environment looks like on the PBA 50 Tour. They may not be as familiar with all the players and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely getting there.
Yeah.
Urethane is becoming more and more prevalent each week out there. It's definitely, becoming higher out there. And you look at the next wave of people coming in, and as these guys who are turning 50 start to come in the tour, they're not straight players anymore. They're rev players. They're open angled, and when I mean open angled, they're using, head bellies of 4 or more boards to the front, maybe more to create the angles they want to create. And so, the straight player game was obsolete on the tour as I was out there. And, I was fortunate enough to win 5 times in an era where straight wasn't really great anymore.
Yeah.
And it's becoming that way on the 50 tour as well, where, that the rev rate's just out there and the lanes break down. I'm chasing it. I'm chasing it all the time. So it's a learning process. The last couple of years haven't been very, very successful for me. I've had some personal things going on in life, and with the grip change and everything else, just haven't been able to find the answers. I've been working at it.
Yeah.
I bowled a tournament last night out. I'm in California right now, and I bowled a tournament last night at Forest Lanes. It's a little 5-gamer, and we bowled on one of the U.S. Open patterns from this year. I think it was number 2. I'm not sure. It was a 43-footer. They were tough. I bowled 144 the first game, and and then battled myself back to almost even, and ended up cashing. So
nice.
I'm seeing things a little better, but I'm still in the testing process, and it's an uphill climb. But I'm fortunate. I've got some good companies with me. I've got Vice Inserts. They're giving me all the tools I need to be able to clear the ball the way I want to, and try to roll the ball the way I want to. And I've got my IM bowling jersey, so I look good while I'm out there bowling 144.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate that the Storm and Roto and 900 global companies have been supporting me, and
that's great. There's no doubt that you'll find it. I mean, if anyone who's unfamiliar with the comeback with Barnes, search for that out. I think you were down by 53 in the 6th frame. So Mike was down by 53 in the 6th frame for the TOC, I believe, the TOC win. And I would argue at that time, Barnes was probably considered like the guy, right? I mean, he was in that top 5 discussion, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, when you start talking about the greats, Barnes will go down as one of the greats, and what he can do to a bowling ball and how his bowling IQ is through the roof. So
you had him, I would say, somewhat in his prime. He's ahead by 53 in the 6th. Title for TOC. I mean, anybody that can come back in that circumstance, and also just personally knowing you, I know you'll find a way. So you mentioned a little bit about the rev rates and the urethane. Again, that unique perspective you have of competing for a high level, being in the sport at a high level for a long time. Do you think the PBA or USBC has missed the boat on anything in terms of two-handed urethane, any of those kinds of things? Or do you think it's just kind of the natural progression through the lens of has it been a detriment to the growth of the sport or a detriment to the sport in some way? What's up, guys? Just a quick message to say that if you like bowling videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button. As always, we appreciate the support so much. We're growing quickly, and we can't thank you enough. Now let's get back to the interview.
I don't have the facts to back up the statement I'm about to make.
That's all right. That's what we're here for.
I will I will qualify this by saying this is my opinion and my opinion only.
That's what we're here for, man. That's what we're here for.
So the whole two-handed thing, personally, I don't care for it.
Sure.
I feel like it's fine at the recreational level, and I feel like it's fine, even in like leagues, open play, whatever, I'm okay with it. I feel like at the professional level, it's just something we shouldn't be seeing.
Sure.
And I'll get a lot of argument, a lot of heat for that,
Well, obviously you're not the only one, so I mean, that to me, that's what this is all about, is getting different perspectives and getting insights, so
Right.
elaborate on that a little bit. Let's hear it.
So, I'll get into the specifics of it in a minute, but first I want to say that by no means do I think two-handed bowling is easy.
Right.
And I also want to say that as rules are in today's game, they are not breaking any rules. So with that being said, it is reality, and it is what we face. And, it's like I'm crying over spilled milk, so to speak, but I've always felt like clearing the thumb is an art form, and clearing it in a pressure situation is a very, very strong skill set that you learn through time. Now, again, you see two-handers, and ironically, they're drying off both hands, not one hand. They're drying off their left hand because they're using that to steer the ball and spin it certain ways and so forth. And so, that's a whole other deal, but they never have to clear the thumb. Thumb's already cleared for them.
Yep.
And that can be the difference between a half tenor, a ring tenor, and a strike really, really quickly in the game of bowling. So that I feel like is a lost art. The other part about two-handing is it's a lot easier to back a ball up. And it has exploited that on TV a little bit. If the left gets good, a person can back it up easier with his thumb out than with his thumb in. Now, the argument there could be, well, you could learn how to two-hand it too, Mike, and do your things. Well, I get it, and I'm not here to bash two-handers. I'm not here to say any of that. I mean, I respect what they do. It's an awesome talent what they do, and I'll use Belmo as the example because he's him and Oscar were kind of the ones that were mainstream and starting it. When Belmo first came on tour, he was a flamethrower, and he was a power player, and Belmo developed into probably he might be the best player on tour right now to be able to touch and control his speed and go up, like 18 miles an hour down to 14 miles an hour on a dime, on a second, on a split second. The deal probably better than anybody in the game right now.
Really?
He's really learned how to bowl, and he's developed into, obviously the player that he is. And
does that mean you would still have Belmo as the best player in the world right now, or would you give that to EJ or Simo? Or
I don't think right this second I could give it to Belmo.
Okay.
Right today, right now. But over the last 5 years, it's hard to argue that he's not the best player in the game, and clearly over the last 10 years, and career wise, he's got more majors than anybody. So, until that gets broken, you got to rank him up there.
Okay. So do you have an opinion on the all-time GOAT debate in terms of him or Walter or Earl, or
it's
too hard to say?
It's hard to say because it's different generations,
Right.
And games were different. I will say this, that I think that just like in any other sport, I think the greats back then would have been great today. They just figure it out.
They adapt.
Your argument is, I'll use golf as an example. Some people say Tiger's the greatest. Some people say Jack Nicklaus is the greatest. Well, Nicklaus has 18 majors and 72 wins. Tiger has 15 majors and 82 wins. So who really is the best of all time? I mean, if you're counting majors, then we go with Jack and we go with Belmo. If you're counting titles, you go with Walter and you go with Tiger, right?
Right.
So it's subjective. How much weight do we put on a major? Is a major worth 2 titles? Is a major worth 1.5 titles? I don't know. The bottom line is, when you're talking bowling, if you're talking the greatest, you're always going to say Earl, Walter, and Belmo right now, because those are the standards. That's just the standards. And when you talk golf, unless you're going back to the 1920s, you say Tiger and Jack, and no one argues with you. That's just kind of what it is,
Right.
And then there's an echelon of players who are obviously great, but just not the greatest of all time. I mean, you got to put Duke in that conversation. He's got 40 titles.
Yeah,
that's incredible. I don't remember how many majors he has, but he has 40 titles on tour. I mean, only 3 players have done that. That's just incredible.
Yeah. It is unbelievable. Are there any players that really impressed you that you were, that don't come into the greatest of all time conversation, like the Norms or the, is there any players that over the years that you've been like, wow, this, you're just really impressed by them? Or do you feel like once you see it, they almost always become, one of those guys that get to 20 plus titles?
I think there's answers to both sides of that. So obviously watching Pete Bowl, the guy can throw it straight, the guy can hook the lane, and he can do it like instantly. He can go from hooking the whole lane to throwing it straighter and being effective both ways immediately. Now, maybe not now so much anymore. Father Time is catching up with all of us. But when Pete was in his prime, like for example, in 2001 when I lost to him, when I bowled 279, he bowled 289 in a show to beat me. The format that year was you had a wild card match, and then you had 2 semifinal matches, then you had a title match. And Pete bowled Himmler in the wild card match, and he was basically standing left gutter hooking the lane, and he barely got through Himmler. I think he bowled like 2-0 or something like that, really low score. And the next match I bowled Schaefer, and I was playing him out, and I bowled 250. And then the next match Pete has to bowl Duke, and Duke's playing him out, and Pete kind of moves right, and he goes something like spare strike, spare off the sheet for 260 to win.
Wow.
And then he goes the next 10 against me for 289. So you're talking about a guy who bowled his first match hooking the lane and got off the lanes, watched the match and said, you know what, I've got to move right. He moved something like 15 or 17 right, threw it harder, squared up, and shot 260, 289 to win a title. You know, that's impressive.
Unbelievable. Yeah. We had a talk with Ruben from Kegel. Viewers, you can go check that out. But obviously he doesn't have the success that you have as a player for sure, but he's been a very prominent coach, and he talked a lot about how really what makes the great players really great is that they repeat at a high level, but a lot of the times that gets too much credit. It's the fact that they have so many different tools in their toolbox. They can go way left and hook it, like you're saying, like Pete did. They can go way right. They can up the speed. They can lower the speed, and they do that based on the environment, which is like, it really is incredible.
Craig, let me stop you real quick. I didn't answer your second part of that question, so
yeah, go ahead.
People who impressed me, and I mean, there's a ton of people I could go on and say who impressed me. Voss, Duke, Wiseman, Simonson's doing it. EJ's doing it. Bill O'Neill's still doing it. Tommy Jones obviously did. I mean, the list is huge. But then there's guys that get you to shake your head, and by no means am I calling these guys out to say that they're terrible or they're great, because they, like, physically their games are phenomenal. And I was having a conversation with a guy last night about Mike Machuga. Mike Machuga threw it great, and it was the same thing. If he wanted to go straight up the one board, he could go right at the one board. If he wanted to get in the left gutter and throw it to the one board and bring it back, he could do it. He could play fallback. He could do it all. But the guy won 1 or 2 times on tour.
Yeah.
Now, or what was that? Was that bad luck? Was it circumstance? Was it just one of those things? I don't know, but
yeah,
it baffled me, because I felt like this is a guy that should win 5 times a year.
Yeah.
I know Mike personally. I don't have a problem with him. I get along with him wonderfully.
Yes. I think that's a question many people
asked him this stuff,
Yeah, I think that's a question many people have. And honestly, it's a great segue to the question that I was most excited to ask you, which is, when you've competed at that level for that long, at a high level, if you can identify, I would think it has to be something between the years, something mental that allows you to compete at that level for 10 years, win 5 titles, go on to become also player of the year at the senior tour. What do you think it is that separates those guys that can kind of get competitive, maybe win a title in the national tour, versus the guys that are able to, get more than a single title and stay competitive for many years?
I think there's a lot of factors into that. I mean, I think you got to be obviously talented and gifted and work hard. Nobody just doesn't practice and become successful. I mean, if you troll Facebook, you follow Create the Difference, and Ron Hicklin is constantly pointing out about how hard EJ Tackett is working.
Right.
And it shows, because he's on every show basically. So sure. It's not a coincidence. Gary Player once said, boy, I found that the more I practiced, the luckier I got.
Yeah,
and
I love that.
They go hand in hand. So first and foremost, being talented and working hard, has a lot to do with it. But to me, it's a little bit of ego, and it's a little bit of what goes on in your ears, between your ears. You got to have some ego in this game. You got to want it. You got to believe in yourself. You got to be confident without being cocky or arrogant. It makes any sense.
I've heard it called a killer instinct. Do you like that phrasing, or is that kind of what you're referring to?
You got to kind of have it a little bit. I mean, when you have your opponent down, you got to make sure you don't let them, get back in the game. And like in my instance, when you were basically all but pummeled, you got to keep fighting because you just never knew. And for me, that's part of it too. I hate to lose at anything I do. I am very competitive. I don't let that detract from the spirit of the game. But at the end of the day, if I was to equate it to a prize fighter, if you knock me down, I'm going to get back up and come right back at you. And if you knock me down again, I'm going to get back up and come back at you again. And the only way to make sure that I stop coming at you is to keep me down.
And
so I think it's all of that, I mean, you have to have this will to win, to succeed. And then the part about between your ears comes in, because how do you stay in that moment? How do you stay calm? How do you keep your breathing under control? How do you keep the value of the shot at just being a shot, instead of the value of the shot becoming the $200,000 Tournament of Champions winner, something like that? Those are tricks you learn, through practice and through repeatability and experience. Really, experience is a great teacher.
Do you think you have a bit of a background in coaching as well? I know here in Arizona, when you lived here, you coached a bit. That aspect that you're talking about, that maybe I might call killer instinct, that mental side, as well as the talent side. Now, obviously, hard work, anyone can work hard. But I'm curious if you feel like to go from, say, a 20th to 40th on the national tour every year to top 20, and maybe in your, spend many years maybe in the top 10, the difference between those two players, do you think that can be coached, or is it just kind of a natural personality that people have? Like, can you learn it? Can you learn what it takes to go from 30th to top 20 and stay there for 5 years, 6 years?
I think it's possible to learn it. I think it would be rare, but I think it's possible. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, you look at like Chris's Barnes kid, you got Ryan Barnes, right? I mean, he didn't bowl much for a long time, and then last few years he started taking it seriously, and then he made the show in Wichita. So bowling is a sport where if you're athletic and you work hard, you can get good pretty quick.
That's a great point.
Doesn't mean you get great, but you can get good pretty quick. To me, great, and let me qualify this with saying I don't think that I'm great. I think I'm really, really good. I don't think I'm great.
Right.
My definition of great is in the Hall of Fame. So at the end of the day, at the end of my career, if I somehow end up in the PBA Hall of Fame, and then someone says, "Mike, you're great," I'll say, "Okay, I believe you." But Hall of Fame, when they say, "Mike, you're great," I'll say, "I was really, really good, but I wasn't great." And that's my opinion. That's just what I believe.
Sure.
So with that being said, the great ones have this thing called what we call it. Jordan Asperg and I like to call it it. You either have it or you don't have it. And you can't teach it and you can't learn it. You either have it or you don't have it. And whatever that it is, it could be the will to win, the desire to just, I can't stand losing, whatever that is, that it factor that allows you to succeed and dig in deep when you're against the wall and put people away when you have them down. That thing is that's what makes people great. And you talk about Tiger had it. You talk about football. I know they gave Lamar Jackson the MVP award, but how do you not give it to Patrick Mahomes again? What he did this year with the Chiefs was phenomenal. And like this guy's, Patrick Mahomes has it 100%. You look at Dak Prescott. He's a good quarterback. He makes the playoffs and stuff. He doesn't win playoff games. He doesn't have it.
And again, just like you're saying, stating opinion here, over the years too, obviously I've competed a little bit as well. There's also almost, you could say, like pressure that gets put on it, like that gets put on that killer instinct. And for some people, you see them have it locally, but then as the stakes get bigger, the stage gets bigger, the lights get brighter, they don't have it as much. They don't look the same as they do maybe locally at a local tournament as they do at a national tournament. But those guys that really have it, it almost doesn't matter the environment at all. They just always have it, which brings into the next question, I guess. It's kind of similar, but I think most people watching this video are going to be pretty good local players that maybe would like to become really good regional players. What do you think? I mean, you've competed in many regionals, have a lot of regional titles. You've seen coaching, you talk to those guys a lot. I'm sure they ask you for advice. What do you think holds back most local players from becoming really good regional players, with a handful of regional titles?
I think it comes down to that it factor.
It factor. Okay.
Again, like you said, how do guys perform when they're bowling for more at stake? When you're bowling league, I'll answer it differently. This will answer your question. And it's the easiest, simplest way to answer it. And it's the most difficult thing to actually do. But
I like it.
And I talked about this when I did the Straight Up 5 podcast, and they loved it. So I'm sure you're going to love it too. So basically, how many times when you go bowl league, you put your shoes on, the lights come on for practice, you get your 10 minutes of warm up, and you're free willing, you strike like every shot in practice, right? You're bombing them, you can't miss, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden the lights come on, first frame 10 pin, second frame 7 pin, third frame 4 pin, double, whatever, right? And you shoot 2-team, but you never missed in practice. What's different? We now have an expectation on the shot. Yeah. So when you were practicing, you were just loose and you were freewheeling and you were just throwing the ball and you were letting the body do what it knows how to do. But once the lights came on, you started thinking about, I need to strike. I put a value on the shot now, as opposed to just throwing it and letting it be. So now there's a value on the shot. Well, we'll take it a step further. Now it's not league, but now it's a local tournament, and you need to strike to win. Okay, now it's a regional title, and you need to strike to make the cut, or you need to strike to make match play, or you need to strike to win. And now it's a tour title, and now it's a major. Well, the values have increased significantly, but the objective has never changed. The objective is simply this in the game of bowling. I'm going to step on the approach, and I'm going to make a good shot and try to knock 10 pins down. If I don't knock 10 pins down, my next objective is to knock down whatever's left. End of discussion. It's second frame, reset, do it again. And okay, so it sounds simple and it sounds almost stupid, but it sounds simple, but that's the game. And the guy who can get up in the 10th needing that strike to win the Tournament of Champions, but can get his mindset and his breathing down to all this is one shot and all I'm trying to do is strike, like all I've done for my whole life. Those are the guys that succeed.
Yeah.
Now, they may not look at it that way and they may not say that's what they're doing, but that's really what they're doing.
Yeah. It's just kind of emotional management, mindset management. And, a little bit of what I read in sports psychology is that's really what the key factor is really mastering your mind and being able to point it in whatever direction you want. And then as the stage gets bigger, it becomes harder to control it. It just becomes even more of a beast. Maybe telling you, don't grab it, don't throw it to, don't do this, don't do that. And, so yeah, absolutely. It makes a ton of sense. And it's interesting to hear that for you, that it factor, it really is something that's kind of scalable over time. And people should really maybe think about that aspect about themselves and even the mental game, maybe more so than bowling balls and layouts. And, coming from the pro shop side, obviously we hear a lot of that. So last question I have for you, what are some of your favorite places you've ever traveled to? I mean, that's again, another unique aspect is you've been all over the place. Is it international? Where do you love to go?
I'll answer that in a second, but I want to touch on that last comment you made.
Okay. Yeah, great.
So Arnold Palmer was playing golf somewhere, and he was with a bunch of guys, and he was talking, and he asked the guys, he says, you've heard that golf is 90% mental and 10% something else, right? And the guys go, yeah. And he goes, well, what's the other 10%, And he gets, staying calm, shot making, physical, practice, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Here's all these answers. And he goes, the other 10% is mental. Because at the level that you're at, whether it be the regional level or the tour level, you're good enough to get there.
Yeah.
So you can physically do things good enough to be there and be competitive. What keeps the guys from winning is all mental.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, now barring, getting a bad break when you need a hit, you stone an 8 or you ring a 10 or whatever, and you lose. You can't help that.
Sure.
But if you go back and you look at why guys succeeded and why guys didn't succeed, most of the time it's mental. How they handle themselves and so forth. So it's all mental. Don't get me wrong. Having the right ball in your hand, matching up to the lane is important. It's definitely important because it allows you miss room and allows you an extra hit a game, which is huge out there at that level. But it's mental. I mean, it really is. I can't stress that enough. You physically got to be good. You wouldn't be out there if you weren't already physically doing something okay. So it's mental.
Exactly.
Is exactly what does it. So I just wanted to touch on that. But
no, I appreciate that. Yeah.
The cities, I've only bowled over internationally twice. I went to Japan twice for the Japan Cup for a tour, and that was fun. Didn't have much success over there, but it was definitely a unique environment to be treated like a baseball player or a football player or a basketball player. To be respected like that was a lot of fun. The Japanese take the game very seriously. They respect it. And when you walk in the bowling center, not that we like to be worshiped, but it's nice to be recognized and appreciated for the, the dues you've put in and the work you've put in and the achievements that you've made, to be recognized for them, and I say that because, and I use this as a great example because, I've been in Phoenix for a long time and you obviously are from Arizona. We have a lot of great golf courses there. And there's some nice courses that I can't call up and say, hey, I'm Michael Haugen Jr. I'd like to come out and play your course today. Is there anything you can do for me? And they'd be like, yeah, $500, come play. But if I was Larry Fitzgerald or somebody else and I make that phone call, you know what, we got room, you can come on out, you can play. And it may not be exactly like that. They may still be paying, they may not be, I don't know. But
sure,
they get in. They have the money to do it because their sport has paid them to do it. Our sport doesn't do that. So that part of it is, my mouth. But it is what it is. No one told me to bowl. I chose to do it, and, you live with it.
Yes.
So, sorry. Getting back to the cities. So overseas, Japan was a lot of fun to bowl that twice. And then one year I got invited to bowl Bruno Biodin's tournament over in Europe. And unfortunately, if I remember correctly, I missed the first flight over, so I had to catch a different flight. I didn't have a lot of time to enjoy France, but I did bowl. And unfortunately, right when that tournament was over, I had to get on a plane and come back to the United States to bowl one of those team tournaments that the PBA was running back in the day when it was the manufacturers' teams and stuff. So overseas, I can only tell you I went to France once and I went to Japan twice, both for fun, but I didn't get to do it like a Tim Mack would do it or like for a while and stuff. So.
Right.
So I can't really touch on that.
Did the international top the list though? Like, I mean, if it would you prefer to go back to Japan, over any other place at this point, or are there certain spots within the U.S. that you just have relationships or experiences that it's like, man, if there's one other place I would want to go right now, top of the list, it would be
the top. That's hard to say. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But I will say that, like, if you said, hey, you could go to Japan again. We don't have a Japan Cup right now, if I'm not mistaken, on the PBA tour. Right. So, first of all, you'd have to get that back, right? Like that sponsorship and that term would have to be supported and put back together again. And then that would have to mean that I was bowling on the national tour and I was competitive enough to earn that spot and be there. So in that scenario, my God, I'd love to go back to Japan.
Yeah.
That would mean I was still at the top of the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that answer.
We know that's not the case, so we'll put that dream aside. And I'll tell you that I love bowling in New York.
Okay.
The atmosphere there is, it's, you live on the West Coast and you know how it is. I mean, you bowl a tournament here and you get eliminated and you go home. Not many people stick around and watch. Not many people stick around and cheer on their buddies. It's pretty much, it's a me game, and you bowl and you're out and you go, right? Very rarely do you see that, but you go on the East Coast and you bowl, and these guys have got their groups behind them, their posses, their traveling buddies, and nobody leaves until all the guys in the group are done.
Yeah,
it's different, and
that's cool.
And it's a unique environment to bowl in, and not to say that people out here aren't real, but in New York they tell you what they think. And people sometimes associate that with being rude. It's not rude. They're just being honest with you.
Yeah.
And they don't get all but hurt about it. Some people on the West Coast, if you say the wrong thing to somebody, you hurt their feelings and they don't talk to you for a week. I don't care for that. I prefer the East Coast. So New York has always been a fun place to bowl. Woodland Bowl in Indianapolis, I've had a lot of success there. That's always a fun place to go bowl. Believe it or not, Austin, Texas. Every year we bowled there, I made match play. I made my first show in Austin, Texas. So that place will always hold a little special place in my heart. And then I've bowled good in Florida too, and obviously I've had a couple good tournaments in Vegas, but I like the East Coast. There's just something about that environment, that
I tend to agree with you. I mean, a lot of the people that I like the most have that East Coast vibe, they're just honest. And I grew up, on the East Coast, technically in Virginia, and I moved out here, and I feel like I've kind of adapted, and I can kind of, mind my P's and Q's, so to speak. But when I find that person, especially working in retail, that just says it like it is, it's just, it's a lot more fun to be around. So
absolutely.
I totally agree with you, man. So Mike, thank you so much for your time. Viewers, if you are unfamiliar with his 53 pin comeback, I'm telling you, you got to watch it. It's super cool. And Mike, I'm assuming we can follow you on the PBA 50 tour this year. Any other places people can find you?
Well, basically, if you go on Facebook, Michael Haugen Bowling, I post all the stuff I bowl, whether it be a local tournament or national tour or regional. I do that. I'm also on Twitter, now X, but I forget to post on that. I'm bad. I always say I'm going to do it, and I forget to. And then I just created an Instagram account, but I have really yet to post anything there. So
so Facebook and anything
is Michael Haugen Bowling. I believe the Twitter or X is Haugen Bowling.
Yeah.
And I think on Instagram, I think I'm 72 Golf Hack 72. I don't know why I chose that. If
I changed my name, it'd be 120 Golf Hack. So
yeah.
But anyways, Mike, thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate you, and good luck in all your future events, and kind of finding that path to success and victory again, which I'm sure you will.
I hope I do. And thank you for having me on the show. And again, real quick, I want to thank I Am Bowling and Vice and Storm Roto and 900 Global for taking such good care of me and allowing a 57-year-old man to still play a kid's game and still chase my dreams. So I'm grateful for you guys. So thank you very much. And Craig and all the other guys out there that have these live streaming shows and feeds and educational things. Thank you guys, because we need guys like you to help grow the game and continue that there's a future for kids, for your kids who are probably old to start bowling now. And
they're getting close.
And maybe this is where they want to go. Maybe one day they'll be able to say, you know what, I made a living just throwing a bowling ball.
Hard to do.
Instead of I made a living bowling and doing something else.
Yeah, exactly. I hope so too, man. That's what many of us are working towards. So I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks so much, man. And we'll see you on the lanes.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Take care.